Starring yours truly, Andrew Callahan for the Boston Herald. Tommy Curran from NBC Sports Boston. We have a short window here. We're going to make it work. He has to do television tonight. We are doing television tomorrow. But first, Ezekiel Elliott is signing on the dotted line. Your instant reaction, Tom Curran.
About time. Very, very, very necessary. As you and I discussed a little bit on Friday, right after the game. Both of us, I think, are disappointed and underwhelmed by the second-year running backs. You need depth behind Ramondre Stevenson. And there's some numbers that we can plumb on Ezekiel Elliott that I just really quick reference to see how much use and where he still has on his in terms of. Did you freeze or did I?
Looks like you froze, but we'll keep rolling here. We'll see how it goes. Ezekiel Elliott signing a one-year deal, maximum value $6 million, $3 million base salary, $2 million in incentives, and then $1 million signing bonus. We losing you got me now?
Yeah, I think because I'm outside, my feed might be weak.
Is Bo Curran gnawing on your internet cords back there? Any Ethernet?
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to close some with all my Zeke research, and they make a difference.
All right. Let me run for a bit then and be a good teammate here. And I just ran down the contract there, which anyone who was looking at this deal knew was going to be incentive-based. Not only just because the Patriots would prefer to do incentives for every player and every single dollar that they hand out, but Ezekiel Elliott's market was very dry. He had multiple bidders. That's great. It amounted to $3 million in base salary, and one in a signing bonus. So there's not a whole lot here. This is a guy who's clearly past his prime. Okay, you could talk about the 3 Pro Bowls, all-pro team. That all-pro team was in 2016, okay? And for him, you're looking at a guy who averaged under 4 yards per carry last season, but did have, on a high volume, 876 yards and 12 touchdowns. So that's where we're at with him. And everyone's favorite nugget, which really helps the Patriots, Tom, he's still good in blitz pickup, and he holds onto the ball. So I'd put it like this. You bring Zeke in, he can be a nice 1B, a nice number 2, but he's going to do the dirty work for Ramondre Stevenson, who had to do that and everything else last year and clearly wore down.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting, there's a huge volume, whether we're listening to the radio or watching on television, of information saying, well, Zeke Elliott's not a 1,600-yard player anymore. And that's clearly obvious. Any moron can tell you that. He's not the 50-catch guy anymore. That's fine. But what is he? So I actually plumbed the numbers a little bit, and I'm going to encourage you, too, at some point. When you need stats, go to the Washington Post expanded stats because they have such great stats. Zeke hasn't fumbled since 2020, 468 carries, 231 carries last year. He had 356 yards after contact. That was on a reduced workload, but he was also 9th in the league on 3rd and short, converting 77.2%, 5th among running backs. Damian Harris, the previous year in terms of yards after contact, he was a 1.5 yards per contact. Yards after contact. He was 2.3 the year before. Zeke was at 1.8 last year. So kind of certainly not as explosive as Damian, but the yards after contact is similar. And this is also really cool for people who are like concerned about how dangerous will they be inside the 5. He scored touchdowns on 8 of his 11 carries inside the 3. It's among the best in the league. And he was 4th in converting rushes inside the 10 into touchdowns. So 10 of his 24 rushes inside the 10 turned into touchdowns. So again, that's league. You know, it's up there with Derrick Henry. And we all get it. But what has he brought in to do? He's brought in to pick up short yardage, to blitz pickup, to be decent hands out of the backfield, to take care of the football. So he addresses that. Now, I guess the question is, it's August. What are you doing? I mean, you couldn't have thrown him a little more money prior. And it's the foot dragging Irving somewhat with the Patriots and their offensive personnel decisions in this offseason, Andrew.
I agree. And at some point, that time is behind us, and I think we can complain about it, and we're right to. I mean, we were talking about signing Zeke 2-3 weeks ago. That was before we saw Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris do little to nothing with each of their 15 snaps in that preseason opener against Houston. cover the offensive line, obviously not up to snuff. And Zeke Elliott has benefited from some great offensive line. But I love the stat that you brought up, yards after contact. Because when I look at running backs today, it's not unlike we talk about quarterbacks and the way they extend plays or receivers and get separation. What are you doing when you're on your own? What can you create out of nothing? Zeke Elliott's not doing a whole lot of that. But the Damian Harris comp, according to, I'm not a Washington Post guy, but I've got some PFF stats for you. Very close to Damian Harris, who received about half the attempts that Zeke Elliott did last year. But Damian Harris posted a lower rate of missed tackles forced. So either I'm going through you or I'm going around you. Zeke was better at that than Damian Harris. So they're not going to be a one-for-one player. Like, he has many, many, many more miles on his legs. But the role he'll serve, again, is a 1B, short yardage guy, good in blitz pickup. It's a quality addition. I think it fits for all the right reasons. Honestly, I don't think there's a ton of meat here on the bone until we see him in person. So do you have more to add before we get to Malik Cunningham?
Just that I think he's going to be relevant. It's a successful team that he's coming from, a successful program. So I think it brings a level of expectation for what they'll be about. So to me, there are no downsides. It's for a pittance. It's a guy who falls forward, makes yards. If Kevin Harris does turn into terrific, if he doesn't, you have someone there to do it. And there's no whining about, well, look at all the money spent on running back. Who cares?
Right. And of note, Pierre Strong's missed the last 2 practices. So this might be a health thing where they wanted to fumble around in the discount bin of the USFL where they just signed 2 of their last 3 players, and the third one comes from the XFL. No disrespect to CJ Marable. You're probably not long for Foxborough. Ezekiel Elliott's here, and he's going to have a roster spot when it counts. All right, we want to move on to Malik Cunningham now because, again, Zeke Elliott has signed, plus move for the Patriots. I wrote about it Sunday. You and I have talked about this on TV many, many times before. There's not a whole lot new here. Hopefully, we'll speak to him this week when you and I are in Green Bay, covering joint practices. Also, hopefully, we see more of Malik Cunningham at quarterback, which made major waves Sunday. Here we are speaking Monday after a second practice in which Malik received 5 snaps at quarterback over a team drill. So between the 2 practices, total of 10 out of 112. That's not a big number. It's not a significant number to me. But the piece, Tom, that catches the eye, and I think deserves to catch everyone's ear, is that he jumped in for Mac Jones and he jumped in for Bailey Zappi on 1 or 2 snaps per team drill inside the red zone, inside the full field, and they're running a little bit different offense with Malik Cunningham. So on a scale of 1 to 10 of training camp stories, where does this land and why?
I would say it lands at about a 7.3 because of the ramifications it could have down the road for both players and for the Patriots offense and the explosiveness of their offense. When you look at the way offenses are built to exploit defenses now, the Patriots have really good defensive personnel. You and I can easily agree on that. But when you really scrutinize their 2022 season, it was the Sam Ellingers and the Colt McCoys and the Skylar Thompsons and the Teddy Bridgewaters that they feasted on, and Zach Wilson a couple of times. When they got against better quarterbacks, ones who could restart a play after it began, that's when life became difficult. Can Mac restart a play? Not really. Can Bailey Zappi? Again, not really, and he doesn't really have the size or arm strength to make you wary of him. They now have someone in the system, at least, who can restart the play. I'm not saying you should bring him in on 2nd and 12 now because you have an opportunity to just let him run around and make something happen. But as Phil Perry pointed out, I can't remember what the stat was. I think it was explosive plays. You might know this too. Explosive plays created off of scrambles was exponentially higher. Do you know what the stat is?
No, they were high in explosive plays last year, but it certainly was not off of scrambles.
No, but the explosive plays off of scrambles now outnumber explosive plays off of conventional. So you have to incorporate that into your offense. Not only that, but you have to understand your defense is going to be exploited by that, regardless of how good you are situationally, how good you are at plastering, etc. So to have somebody who can run scout team to help you get ready for it, at the very least, which is probably where Malik Cunningham's biggest role might land, or to even have a package of plays where you bring him in on the goal line and he runs read option, or he comes in on a third down, maybe not, comes in on a 2nd and 2 at the 40. I mean, they ran, check this out. Remember when they played Buffalo and they hung around the second meeting with the Buffalo Bills in 2021? Josh McDaniels ran a friggin' triple option play with Mac Jones. And they scored a touchdown with Damian Harris on that. So it allows some innovation for Bill O'Brien, who knows how to operate with that.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because let's go through these again. 10 snaps out of 112. That's fewer than Trace McSorley saw as a third-team quarterback. The volume is not crazy for a guy who played quarterback in college, comes to the NFL, is playing now in practice, even though the plan originally, full-time wide receiver, meeting rooms, drills, et cetera, et cetera. The shift is notable. He's playing more quarterback. Okay, what is he doing? 9 out of 10 of those snaps, he's either handing the ball off on some sort of read run. You mentioned read option. It could be zone read. It could be some inverted veer or power read, whatever you want to call it. Then he had one play action rollout today, which sailed a little bit and looked like a lot of the wobblers he fired on Thursday night. But that to me indicates there's a specific package here coming. Or there are 2 other reasons why I think they might be doing this, which I'll get to in a second. We'll hear from you. Because now it's time to remind the folks at home, football season is about to kick off, and Fanduel is giving you a chance to win all season long. Here's what you have to do. Bet on a Super Bowl winner. Watch that Super Bowl winner play in the regular season, and every time they win, you will win too. You will get bonus bets every time they win during the season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every single victory. You can use them on spreads, prop bets, over-unders, tons more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. Okay, Malik Cunningham theories. Number 1, I just said it. They have a specific package for him with the plays that we saw against Houston and in training camp. Certain RPO actions, read runs. Or, like you just mentioned, they're getting ready for Jalen Hurts. Most of these reps are against the starting defense. Might as well sprinkle in a couple plays here and there, because why wait until September? It's going to be a huge opener. Or number 3, they want to see what they have. Like Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant last year. And Malik Cunningham is an undrafted guy who got a ton of dough, but for all intents and purposes was just taking 1 pick after Mr. Irrelevant. And so you need to give him opportunities. And the way you would wean him on is let him do what he does best, these kind of plays, and then expand with him and see what he can do more. Because there's a lot more on the table than there was a week ago with him. And I have to think it's for one of those 3 reasons, if not all of the above.
All of the above. All of the above. He's also working at gunner, as Jabril Peppers. So I think, in my experience covering this team, Bill's approach is never to really have a defined endpoint. He didn't have a defined endpoint for Julian Edelman. I'm sure he didn't have a defined endpoint for Matthew Slater. He certainly, I'm sure, does not have a defined endpoint for Malik Cunningham. Just if he finishes what's on his plate, have him bring it up, put more on it, see how he does with that. So could the plate be full at spot change up wildcat / kind of player? Maybe. Could the plate be full at, after 2025, maybe you picked up the 5th-year option on Mac Jones and decide you want him to go someplace else, and you have a guy in-house and his name's Malik Cunningham and he's Lamar Jackson light. I mean, anywhere in between the two is possible, but Bill doesn't have a defined endpoint. We're trying to make Lamar Jackson light, or we're trying to create a gunner who can run 4 plays. That's what's interestingly adaptable about Bill Belichick. What I think is interesting too is the hard he has dealing with off-script, off-schedule quarterbacks, there is a predictability that he likes from his offense, Andrew. There are rules, and you do your job. Well, what's your job when you're a quarterback whose plays break down in front of him and he has to create? There are no rules. So, and there is no job. The job is just to make people miss. So I think that Bill would have to harken back a little bit, not to Tom Brady, but to Lawrence Taylor. There were no rules for Lawrence Taylor. And maybe Malik Cunningham is the offensive second coming of Lawrence Taylor. Or maybe, I mean, honestly, it's antithetical to what Bill embraces in terms of.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because
throw the cards up and see where they land.
Yeah, it didn't hit me until I was driving home from practice today, and I texted with a longtime Patriot, retired in the last 4 or 5 years, who had said, Bill likes the mobile quarterback, because we had done TV. I was buying what you were selling. I was drinking what you were pouring me on that. And I thought about, they signed De'Aaron King last year from Miami, another undersized athlete, mobile quarterback receiver. Cam was the quarterback in 2020. None of this is indicative of a full pivot, right? Like they still drafted Mac Jones, pocket bound, statuesque, Tom Brady store brand knockoff down 80, 90% Mac Jones. But I think he's intrigued by the idea. And I think if De'Ara King had lasted more than enough days because he got ousted before he could find a freaking apartment in Foxborough, like it might look like this because Mac Jones is not good enough to keep on the field at all times. Like you were never taking Tom off the field to run some sort of wildcat quarterback or some option stuff with Malik Cunningham. Mac Jones, of course, not in that category. And that's what intrigues me about they're putting real time with the players around him. David Andrews snapped to him today, and that's about where we're limited to say based on these rules. He faced guys who we expect to start on defense. You don't waste all of their time with experiments. Like I think they have a purpose here, and that's what really intrigues me about him, in addition to what it means for Bills thinking at large.
Yeah. I would temper the sample size. I would for the purpose and say, is some of that to give the looks to the defense against starters for the RPOs for what they're going to deal with? Because I heard Mayo was over the moon because really on most of those RPOs, they did a fantastic job blocking up the gaps and walling it off. So I don't know if I think that there is a notion that Bill could be message sending. Bill could be in some ways trying to pave the way for Malik Cunningham to be involved. Mac Jones is far and away the best quarterback on this team.
Yes.
Malik Cunningham is closer to Bailey Zappi, in my estimation, than Bailey Zappi is to Mac Jones in terms of replaceability. Bailey Zappi's apex is Tyler Heineke. I never get it right, and there's a reason for that because it's a career backup.
Yeah.
To me, Mac Jones is, again, he could become a player you never take off the field. I mean, we saw some throws today, again, that are just on a platter. Did he have a great practice? No. He had some mistakes. But I saw Bailey Zappi get picked off on a screen by Sean Wade.
And Bailey Zappi got sacked 6 times. I would say real quickly, too, these were Mac's 2 best days back-to-back all training camp, you would say, right?
Yeah, I was not there on Sunday.
Okay.
But I just, he's just much more dialed in.
Yeah.
To me than Bailey Zappi can hope to. He's just not an accurate enough thrower because of his stature, I think.
Well, let's stay with Zappi for a second because that is the next step, right? Like the next question I have here ready to ask you is what do you need to see next to get this story to have more of your attention? And let's just say that happens. Malik takes snaps against the Packers in team drills. He goes from 5 snaps on Sunday, 5 snaps on Monday to 10 or 12 and eats into Bailey's time. I'm not expecting any of this to happen. But Bailey Zappi in that scenario not only could be replaced, but he might be able to be converted into a trade chip. As we all know, the Patriots dealt from a position of strength and depth at quarterback with Jacoby Brissett back in 2016. Very different scenario, yada, yada. But they would like certainly to add an offensive tackle. And if they have another team that's sold on what Bailey Zappi showed last year, might you be selling high on Zappi if you're comfortable enough with Malik Cunningham? No, shaking your head. Okay, fire away.
It's bad enough that he is your heartbeat away from running a team with postseason aspirations because he's not good enough to do that.
Okay.
He is a spot starter in my estimation. That's why I was talking last week about you need to get a veteran quarterback in here, a Gardner Minshew, a Case Keenum, a you name it type player who you can say, okay, he can start 12 games and maybe approximate about what Mac does. But if you trade Bailey Zappi away, who is a spot starter and could say go 3-3 over 6 games perhaps before teams start to chew him up. And you have Malik Cunningham, who was undrafted, who does have a massive amount to learn, who wasn't even indoctrinated into the quarterback room fully until maybe the last week or so. I think that would be courting disaster at that position.
Okay. Yeah.
That's why I say, but that's not to say next year wouldn't be a great idea if Malik Cunningham has a spectacular offseason and Bailey Zappi kind of finds his level.
I get ahead of myself in a way that I don't like to do frequently. Like I would say with these bigger stories, the moments that we have, you recognize 2 years ago, Mac Jones lights up the Giants when Cam Newton is on the sideline because he broke COVID rules. You said, Mac won the job today. And I'm going, yeah, I don't really know. My risk in taking that generally steady approach is I miss those moments like you picked up on. That day has been said. And you're more often right than not. But then you're a little behind in certain instances. This could be one of them. But I jump ahead in the sense of Malik Cunningham has jumped ahead of expectations in the matter of 5 days with the way he's running the offense. It's a very different offense. And so if this were to be extrapolated over the next couple of weeks, like I said, again, more time against Green Bay, good preseason game, yada, yada. That's where the Zappy replaceability discussion, I think, gets interesting.
Yes. I completely agree that Bailey's replaceability is definitely now certainly on the radar.
Yeah.
But he is not in a position where that's imminent. There's so much more for Malik Cunningham to do, including, I think, in real games against real ones with real game planning against him, where they're really trying to F him up.
Yeah.
Because that to me is what Bill would say too, the game planning.
It's a great point. And I'll just leave the folks with these numbers. 32 reps for Mac Jones today. 32 for Bailey Zappi. 5 for Malik Cunningham. So that tells you what they think and where they're at with them. So this has been fun. You got to go do TV. Any leftover takes, thoughts? Patriots training camp. Is Bo around? Can we say Bo Curran, what he thinks of Malik and Zeke and the show that we've done here and scrunched into 22 minutes?
He got locked outside. My wife, because he's wearing a jingly collar, he got stuck inside. So he's inside right now. I would have had him outside. But I'll keep him inside so it doesn't drive you crazy. But I appreciate it. We got quick slants tomorrow.
Yep.
I'm going to have you in the Patriots Talk pod. We can hash through more of this Zeke stuff, more of the Malik stuff, and more of what we want to see in Green Bay, which is what we're going to be doing all week. But I appreciate you.
You got it. Yeah, appreciate you, buddy. You were out there for 6 days. I'm getting out on Thursday, flying out tomorrow, which is Tuesday morning, hopefully when most folks are listening to this. He is Tommy Curran. You know where to find him. Listen to him, read him, NBC Sports Boston. Yours truly still at the Herald, NBC Sports Boston a little bit. And, of course, here in the Pass Interference Podcast, which is brought to you by Fanduel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Thank you, sir.
Goodbye now.